Social media's influence on our daily lives is growing exponentially, with almost every form of communication and sharing of pop culture occurring over these platforms. The vast exposure to the world at our fingertips has opened us up to a lot of misinformation, especially about our bodies and food. While the world of influencers can be quite addicting, mental health suffers greatly due to the expectations for body standards and allows certain misinformation about our bodies, exercise, and food to infect many, especially younger and more impressionable audiences. In the fall of 2019, I lost almost 40 pounds in less than a month due to the early stages of anorexia. I myself had fallen victim to the expectations I felt society had for me, and thus, I believe this to be a pretty big issue. The American education system has little to no health-based curriculum focus in order to combat the damage that modern-day diet culture and social expectations have had on many people. The option for this path of education should be accessible to help stop this increase in spread of misinformation. In order to understand the effects of diet culture, we will first unpack the source of these standards and the problems the media creates around diet culture, and then cover how social media directly and passively affects its participants. And lastly, we'll go over some ways to combat this issue and solve this as a society. Diet culture has been a part of society since icons have been accessible to the public. Whether it be Marilyn Monroe, Farrah Fawcett, or Kylie Jenner, impressionable people have been affected and strive to change their appearances to look more like their idols. The rise of social media's influence on our perception of bodies, standards, and mentalities around food have left many people vulnerable without accurate knowledge, thus triggering the largest issue: eating disorders. According to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, or the ANAD, it is stated that 9% of the world's population will suffer from an eating disorder at some point in their life. While that may not seem like a lot, that's 1 in every 10 people suffering from an eating disorder, and I believe that group is large enough for a cause of change in our society. Aside from that statistic, the same nonprofit estimates that 26% of people with an eating disorder will attempt or commit suicide in their life, making it the second most deadly mental illness, second to overdosing on opioids. What I eat in a day and diet videos thrive online, giving a realistic impression that living a healthy lifestyle is easy, while in reality is misleading information, leaving impressionable audiences completely defenseless to this. In a video essay by YouTube creator Natasha Ocean, what I eat in a day videos are simply caloric counts and are shown to be extremely malnourishing and severely under caloric intake recommendations. And this is just one form of misinformation that spreads online. Another large one is that revolving around body fat and the idea of spot training. People want a certain figure, and they'll pick the quickest route to get there, which leads to desperation, and influencers thrive. Influencers market off being able to tell you that some simple exercises can thin your waist and slim your thighs, while in reality, that's not physically or scientifically possible, according to an article on fitness myths by Alexa Tucker, a writer at self.com. Lastly, the environment of toxic and harmful misinformation will only continue to affect more and more people, specifically young teens, if not educated properly. The media's success in pushing these false health expectations and narratives are what's caused the statistics around eating disorders to be so high. Recognizing these false fitness and diet success is necessary to breaking away from the damages of diet culture. Now that we know the significance of diet culture's negative realities, let's look at how it's affected specific groups of people, and even sharing some personal stories of my own. Eating disorders and other mental illnesses around body image, such as dysmorphia, can be triggered by what we see online and by the people around us. A large part of society functions off the standards of body weight and size. This norm affects mentalities and making people feel less than or not as good as they should be. In an article by Reagan Cheston from the National Eating Disorder Association, she says, and I quote, "If you expect that you can enter a restaurant, public transportation, roller coaster, doctor waiting room, Broadway play, or find a seat on an airplane that accommodates you, you have thin privilege." And that's just one example. Thin privilege is created by a world that is based upon accommodating thin people and seeing thin bodies as more deserving than fat bodies. While that may be a bit extreme, it is indisputable that society favors those who we deem attractive, which most commonly falls on people with a thinner stature. I myself have fallen victim to these societal expectations and have been dealing with an eating disorder for almost 3 years now. In the fall of my senior year of high school, I was tired of not looking the way that I wanted to. I wanted to look like the hot guys that I see on Instagram and TV, and my solution was to starve myself by eating less than 800 calories a day and exercising regularly, causing me to lose almost 40 pounds in less than 20 days. It's addicting. I have since been successful in partial recovery, but I'm still scared of food to some degree, and all because I didn't have the resources on how to achieve my goals healthily. LGBTQ teens and young females especially are most likely to develop an eating disorder due to the influences that we see online and other expectations and misinformation. Once again, from the ANAD, it is estimated that gay men are far more likely to develop an eating disorder than straight men, and that nearly 81% of children claim that they are afraid of getting fat, which only pushes the narrative that we must look a certain way to be accepted and feel good about ourselves. The gay community has its own expectations, and those have also affected me greatly as well. But I am slowly learning to appreciate myself for who I am and what I look like. Eating disorders are a serious problem plaguing our generation and those yet to come. With so many ideal people being held up on platforms, it's easy to get swept up into the societal norm. Acknowledgement of the problem is huge, and making progress with yourself and others. Now that we've discussed the impact of this culture, let's talk about a possible solution and some other ways that we can combat these issues. Education has always been the best way to solve societal issues. By educating people on the correct way to live healthy lives, misinformation and negative influences will be less impactful. With 1 in every 10 people in the US suffering from an eating disorder, it's interesting that the US education system refrains from implementing a more health-based curriculum to help kids and teenagers combat these expectations. Health should be a part of physical education. Schools should focus on making sure that their students live healthy lives while also meeting academic requirements. Setting kids up to enter a world with better education on nutrition and health will help for a productive future. With physical health being an academic focus, nutrition should be on equal ground, as eating is essential for survival, and there isn't enough accurate information going around to alleviate some impressionable audiences and possibly relieve some ideas they may have on their bodies and food. Lastly, another important solution is that of self-accountability, because in reality, we are responsible for our own triggers, and we must escape the environments that damage us. An article by Andy the DR on how to handle diet culture suggests removing oneself from anything that would be triggering us, such as deleting Instagram or surrounding ourselves with people that make us feel good about ourselves. While the situation is extreme and needs to be handled, there are small things such as unfollowing models and suggesting nutrition-based courses that make all the difference. In conclusion, we have talked about how the problems of diet culture have affected people like me, like you, how social media and misinformation have affected our society, and how to combat these negative environments and mentalities surrounding these expectations and these standards. Now, all of you who are watching my speech, I would like you to pause and go grab a healthy snack. If you've had trouble eating today, or not, I would like you to join me in nourishing our bodies, as food is fuel and should be nothing to be ashamed of. Are you ready? Good job. Thank you.